Hi Rahul.
Hello, Sudha.
Hi Rohi. Hi Mugdha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you? I think you're on mute.
Safe all?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I said all safe, right?
Yeah, all safe. How about you?
All right, fine. Yeah, we are all fine.
Great, great. Okay, let's start then. So what we are going to do today is that we are going to quickly touch on functions. So give me 1 minute, guys. I'll just take my mouse. Yes. Okay. So first of all, I will quickly explain the use cases, the very primary use case of a function. We have touched based on this earlier as well, and we are just quickly going to look into this. So we have a function that we are going to see where we are going to give me 1 minute. We are going to have a block of code which is given by indentation. So inside indentation, we will have a block of code. That code may have a single line or it can have, let's say, multiple lines. These multiple lines may even result into call to another functions. Okay, so it may well be possible that one function is calling another function. You may or may not have noticed until now, we have already called a lot of functions. They are also called, sometimes they are called, let's say, functions, and sometimes they are known as, let's say, methods. Okay, these words will be used interchangeably. Technically speaking, there is no difference between calling it a function or calling it a method. At least I have not found one. So irrespective of what you call them, they will be defined and they'll have a name. Okay, so they'll have some kind of, let's say, name, and then they may or may not have any parameters. Now when they have parameters, then we're going to see how these parameters work. They can either be the parameters which take input, or they can either be parameters which already have a default value. Okay, but there'll never be parameters which has out values. Example given, there are some programming languages like Oracle PL/SQL where in a function you can actually define the variables which will be input from the user, from the console, from the system, and you can also define variables which will be output, which will be given back on screen or to the user or to the calling function. In this case, there is no such case. So all the parameters here are almost exclusively input parameters. Okay, so they are either simply variables or they are predefined, which we are going to see. They can be called functions as well as, let's say, methods. Inside a function, I can make call to other functions as well, and this is how the code is going to look like. So at least one liner code should be there, otherwise it's going to give an error. So we're going to look at these aspects and then we'll see how or what kind of doubts we have. Okay, so let's try to build a function. So I'm going to take a very simple use case. Let me just increase the zoom. Okay, so let's create a function. Sorry guys, I'm back now. I'll just share my screen. There was some problem. Let me share. Let me see how many participants are there. Yeah, all of you are there. I think Mugdha is just trying to rejoin in. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, it threw me out. So I went out and now I'm back. Fine. So we were at let's say functions. Hope you can see my screen. So the most frequent use case of using a function, as of course, is that we would like to reuse our code. So every time we need to reuse certain functionality, we are going to write a function. Okay, and that's exactly what we do when it comes to software engineering. That's exactly what we're going to do when it comes to data science. Example given, we are going to quickly touch base at a later stage on what is the source code, or a repository where we store the source code. The one that we are going to look into is, let's say, Git. So we're going to look at Git or GitHub, where usually we put our code. Let's say there is a developer here, we have another developer here, we have another one here. Okay, maybe the example is wrong. Let's say they are the data scientists. Okay, so I have 3 data scientists in my team, 1, 2, 3. Okay, what one is trying to do is he or she is actually writing some piece of code to do some kind of the analysis. Okay, as part of the analysis, let's say she needs to I don't know, remove, okay, all the missing values. So I'll just call this RMV, remove all the missing values from the data set. So she has created a function, user one, who is also a data scientist, and she has put the code into Git. We are going to look at Git at a later stage. Just imagine Git as of now to be a folder which anyone can access in this team. Now, 2 have access to Git, 3 have access to Git, and what they say is, let's say, uh, this lady number 2, she wants to write some analysis code and she wants to do the same thing. Ideal condition, always go back to your Git, always go back to the central place or the central folder or the central server where you have all your code. Check if somebody has already done that implementation. Entirely depends on how good this person, data scientist one, was in writing good doc strings. This is something that we are going to look into now. And readme files. Okay, readme files is something we are going to look at a later stage. We are not going to touch readme files right now. Maybe when we touch Git, you are going to look at what is a readme file or what is a markdown readme file, right? Readme file is one thing, but docstring, this is really, really very important. We're going to see why docstring is really important. However, the ideology of functions is that, first of all, I create something which is almost always reusable. So this RMV should be generalized in such a way that any data scientist is going to use or make a call to RMV. He or she can make a call to the function, and he or she should be able to do what the docstring of that RMV asks them to do or tells about the functionality. We will look at the docstrings now. Okay, this way we do maximum reusability. This is a very important concept, and you all should really keep this in mind when you are doing things. You should share code as much as possible, and don't write even a single piece of code if somebody has already written that. Example, if there is somebody who has already created a code to print the Fibonacci series, it makes no sense for you to practice typing by only creating another function with your name which does the same thing. That's not really a best practice. When you are learning the language, when you are actually, let's say you are into HackerRank and you are actually practicing the programming language, fine, you can create any number of functions as you want. When you are going to work, never write much code. Keep your code clean, keep your code small, use as much as reusable components which are already available in your organization or in your college or in your team. If you don't do that, your code base will become bulky and unnecessarily bulky, because let's say all of these 3 people have written a function to remove the null or let's say missing values. So it does not really make sense, right? I mean, irrespective of what kind of data Mr. 1 or Miss 2 or Miss 3 has, it doesn't really matter. End of the day, there will be some kind of formula, some kind of algorithm which anyone will use to remove the null values, which is as simple as you simply delete the row where you find any null value. So if that's only the operation that I'm going to do, why not write a function which takes an input? Let's say it is going to take input as a data frame. the structure that we have already seen earlier, right? So it is going to take an input as a data frame, and it is going to return a data frame again, or it is going to simply update the same, let's say, data frame, and it is going to remove all the null values. In this way, any data scientist, irrespective of how many data scientists you have in your team, it doesn't matter, anybody can make use of that code. And then the individual scripts written by each and every person is going to be very small, because he or she has already reused as much as possible, right? So that's exactly what we are going to do here as well. Let me remove the drawing, and I'll say, let's create a function to print hello. Okay, we'll start small and then we are going to expand. Okay, def print hello. I'm going to write and then I'm going to explain. First, the keyword def. Okay, the keyword def. This is not daf. Yeah, so it's def. It is short form of, let's say, definition. I'm getting a warning on my screen that my internet connection is not stable. Can any one of you quickly tell me on chat if you are still able to hear me properly? Or you can unmute and say.
Yes, please.
Okay, okay. I see Rohi saying yes, and I'm saying yes. I'll continue. So the first word I say, this is a keyword, by the way. You cannot use a variable name with a keyword. Okay, mind it. So the keyword def signifies that what follows is going to be the name of my function, right? Then I have the name of the function. In this case, the name of the function is print underscore hello. And then I have an open bracket and an ending bracket. Okay. Inside this, I may have given n number of input parameters. Okay. I may have given, let's say, 3, 4, or 5, let's say, parameters inside this. But as of now, I do not need any parameters. Why? Because I just want to print the single word or the single text here, right? I'm just going to print the hello text. So I do not need any input variables. Later on, in the later examples, I'm going to need. So this is where I'm going to put the variables. But as of now, I don't need it. So that's why it is blank. So keeping input variables in Python functions are optional, right? Then I have a colon. As of course, as we saw in if-else statements as well, a colon is going to define the start. You see, automatically I got the indentation as I put the enter sign. I'm simply going to say print hello. Okay, I have my function in place. Let's say I have packaged this function as a Python file and I have put this into your Python installation or into your Anaconda installation. Earlier, we have used functions like int. Earlier, we have used functions like list. So can I see the help of the function called list? The answer is yes. Okay, I just have to say this, right? I just have to say this. You see, I saw, I just wrote a question mark and then the name of the function. I can clearly see what it is exactly going to do. Or maybe I can see any other function as well. Let's say print. Okay. So I'm simply going to call the help function here and I can clearly see what it is going to do. Now you see what this is saying. This is a docstring. This is what is very important if you want to print a user-friendly kind of a help along with each and every function. And that's exactly what is missing in the above function. Example given, if I'm going to say print hello, it's not going to print anything. It's going to say no doc string. This file contains the package. It is a function. This file has the definition. It has no doc string. I cannot print the help of this function because I don't have one. Let's give that to him. Okay. If I want to do a doc string, idle condition, I need to give 3 quotes, either 3 single quotes or 3 double quotes. It's up to you whether you're going to use a single quote or a double quote, doesn't really matter. But put your doc string inside this. So this is a reusable function for all my friends to print the text hello. The text, the text will be printed on screen. There are no inputs needed for this function. Okay, so let me just execute this function. The moment I execute this block, this function is created. So print hello exists now. Now let's see if there is any docstring. See, The docstring says exactly what I wanted it to say. This is a reusable function for all my friends to print the text hello. The text will be printed on screen. There are no inputs needed for this function. This is how you give the docstring. It's the same as single quotes as well. You can change this, it will still work. This is how you make the code friendly, so that people reading your code, people executing help function of your code can actually see what you're trying to do. And then to execute, what they're going to do is they're simply going to call the name of the function as many times as they want, right? And then it is going to print the text hello. I hope until this point it was clear. We have created a function, we have given it a keyword def, we have given it a name, we have given it start and end braces or brackets. Inside the brackets, we have nothing. Why? Because in this case, I do not need any input variable. Post which, this is the single line of code. I have to write at least one line of code. What happens if I comment this? In Python, comments are given using hash sign, as you may have already noticed. Multi-line comments can also be given by this. This docstring is nothing but a comment. It's a multi-line comment. Okay. What happens if I remove this single line of code and try to execute? It also executes. Okay. So this is a feature which is there in the Python 3 and above, that even if your function does not have any body, it is still going to compile. It is still going to show you the docstring. See, it is still going to show you the docstring, and if you execute, it's still going to work. The simple thing is, it does not have any code to execute. It's not going to work. Okay, so it's not going to do anything, but it's still going to execute, right? So at least 0 lines of codes are required as of date into the functions which you're going to create in Python. Along with, I would strongly recommend using a docstring. This is optional, by the way. You do not need to use a docstring. If I, let's say, remove this, the function is still going to work. But I don't want to remove that. I want to keep it here. I want to keep it here so that people know what I'm doing with this function. Okay. Now let's create another function where we input the name of the user, and the function is going to print, let's say, I don't know, hello, and then the username, and then something like this. So I'll simply do a copy paste. I'm a very lazy guy. I'm going to take this and do user name here, right? The text will be printed on screen, hello, comma, your name. I'm giving it a good help. Then there are only one input needed for this function, which is your name. Okay, let's see what it is going to do. So print hello, comma, sorry, this is not the right hello. I wanted to print hello and then user underscore name and then 3 exclamation marks. So I execute this, the function is created. What happens if I hide this line? The function will still be created. Means it doesn't matter whether I'm going to make use of this variable username whose scope is defined only within this range. Username cannot be accessed outside. You see, I've created the function. If I call username here, it is trying to execute, it is trying to find the variable, the value, and then it says name username is not defined. Why is this the case? Is because, just a moment, I think I have a chat able to listen. Okay. Okay, so the reason why this is the case is because username is only live or lively inside this block. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. Okay, so I'll just remove this line and I'm going to execute this. So let's say I'm simply going to say print underscore hello, and it's going to print the docstring. There are only one input needed for this function, which is your name, right? Now, one interesting thing you see, I created the function with the same name. This is not function overloading. This is not the same as function overloading. I cannot say now, sorry, I cannot say this anymore. I cannot say this anymore. Why? I created a function without any parameters, print hello. Now I've created another function with same name which accepts a parameter. Now this function is what exists. The earlier function is gone. This is not function overloading. In many programming languages, you can overload functions. Example given, one function can have multiple different variants. This is not the case. When you want to create such kind of a case, you need to create the methods inside a class. Okay, we may not be looking very deeply into object-oriented programming because it's not really that essential into data science. But if in case you would like to do that, please go ahead and give it a try. Overloading of functions is possible in Python, but the way we are doing, the answer is no. Okay, so if I call print hello here, as you can see, there is an error. It says missing one required positional argument username. Okay, you have to give value to username because I'm expecting some value. So let's give it some value. I'm going to say my name. So if I'm going to say my name, it's simply going to print hello and my name. What if I would like to handle that error in a very smart way? So what I'm going to do, in a very lazy and smart way, what I'm going to do, in case the user does not input his or her name, print default value of, let's say, unknown user. Okay, if there is no value given by the user as an input, I'm going to print the value as unknown user. How do I do that? I simply put the default value over here. Okay, so if I say username is equal to unknown user, now I'm going to call, let's say, print hello, and this, it is going to not give that error anymore. Why? Because in this case it is going to use the value which is default. Okay, in earlier case that was not the case. In this case, you must enter input variable value. There is no default value. Okay, else you will get errors. Okay, now if I am going to do sorry, if I'm going to do, let's say, print hello and I give it a name, let's say Rohi, I have to distinguish this function. So I'll just do one thing. I'll just put how are you. Okay, so I'll take this from here and put it into my docstring. Okay, I'm going to create this function and then I'm going to say hello unknown user, how are you. Okay, if I say Rohi inside it, it's going to say hello Rohi, how are you. So this is how you pass the functions, or you pass default variables into the function. Okay, please note, it is not mandatory to give the data types of the input variables. It is not mandatory to give the data type of the function because this is a function. It is a function. It is as simple as a reusable piece of code. You may also choose to ignore the output data type of the function. Don't have to specify that. But we have seen that there can be input variables to a function. How can we define output variables? Okay, let's see. Let's create a function which takes a number as an input, and in return it is going to provide the number incremented by 1. Very simple example, lazy example. Add 1. I'm just going to create a function called add 1. I need a variable. I need something to be passed by the user. So I'll say user number. Okay, and I'll also say that if nothing is entered by the user, if nothing is entered by the user, take the value as 1. Okay, let's see if this comment can be put over here, and can this comment, which is also kind of a multi-line comment only, broken down into single lines, can this work as a docstring? We'll see. Okay, now what we have is user number is an input. All I'm going to do is to do user number plus 1. I just have to return this. So what I do, I write a return keyword and I simply write this. Now, do I see the help of this function? The answer is no. As I said, if it is a multi-line comment and you want that to work as a docstring, unfortunately, you have to put this under quotes. So this time I'm going to use, let's say, single quotes. Okay. In that case, it is going to come over here. Okay, now it is going to do what it was supposed to do. It is going to give you the docstring. Okay, now is that also going to work? Let's see. So add 1. I'm not going to enter anything, right? It returns me a value which is 2. Why? The default value of user number was 1. It has added 1, so the value is 2. If I do add 1 10, then it is going to return me 11, right? As simple as that. So this is how you return values. When I say you are returning a value from a function, I never said that I have to define the data type of the variable user number, in which case the data type can be string, it can be integer, it can be float, it can be a data frame, it can be a series, it can be anything. It can actually be anything at all. Okay, any kind of variable can be returned from the definition of a function or the execution of a function. Okay, something to remember. So what we have seen, we have created some varieties of function. Let's go back and let's see what we have done. We started off with a very simple function, no input parameter, we printed the value. Even this line of code is not mandatory. We saw we can give doc strings using multi-line comments. Multi-line comments, can you hear me guys? Hello?
Yeah, Siddha.
Okay, okay, thank you. So here we saw that multi-line comments has to be given inside single quotes or given inside, let's say, double quotes. Then I can see the help function. I can print the function. Then I went and created another function with a parameter. This is not function overloading. I have created a new version of the function. It is going to accept only a call to the function using an input parameter or its value. So you have to give the value, otherwise it's going to give an error. Then you have another function where you have the default value of the variable provided already. Scope of the variable is within the definition or the body of the function. Okay, then I make a call. In this case, I will never get that error anymore. Okay, why? Because I have a default value unknown user. If you don't enter the username, okay, I'm going to call you unknown user. If I enter the name as Rohi, I'm going to call you Rohi. Fine. Last but not least, I saw I can have a function where I have an input parameter which is user number and it has a default value 1. I am returning user number plus 1 and the name of the function is add1. If I don't pass a value, it is going to return me 2 because the default value is 1. I have added 1. If I pass 10, it is going to return me 11. Fine. This is what we have seen. Couple of things to note. As we saw, not even a single line of code is needed as of date in Python 3 when it comes to the definition of a function. Point number 2, you can choose. This is not a mandate. This is optional. You may want to provide uh, a default, it's a default value to each and every input variable. Third, as I said, if you have noticed, you can give values to each and every input variable, which means I can have more than one input variable as well. Okay, I can have more than one input variable. Example given, let's create a function to pass, two numbers and get their sum. If the user is lazy, consider both numbers to be 0. Okay, def add 2. I'm going to pass num1 is equal to 0 and num2 is equal to 0. I'm going to say that this is going to return sum of two inputs passed by the user. If nothing is passed, 0 will be returned. Okay. Okay, I have only 10 minutes more, which is fine. This is fine because we are already done with this class. That's all I wanted to cover. I'll look into more types and variations of arguments at a later stage. I don't want to blog you right now. There are two more very, very interesting ways of passing input arguments. I'm going to talk about it quickly, but we're going to look at it, let's say, tomorrow. Now, let's complete the function. We have to return, right? We have to return num1 plus num2. Okay, I have to return this. So I simply return this. Okay, now if I make a call to, let's say, add 2 and do not enter anything, the return value is of course 0. If I enter 1 and 2, it is going to return me, sorry, I have done a typo. I've done a typo because it has 2 Ds. So it is going to return me 3, right? This is what it is going to do. What happens if I just add one value? See, it has actually taken the function. I did not specify which value is this, but it has taken the value. How is this happening? Let's test this. Print value of num1 is comma num1, and I'll make a copy paste, and I'm going to print what is the value of num2. Okay, I've created the definition now, and let's see, I'm going to enter this. Value of num1 is 1, value of num2 is 0. So if you pass only one variable, it's going to take the value of the first variable. Can I do something like this? The answer is no. Either you name the variables and you give the value, or you simply give the value. It is going to take in the order. If I give 1 comma 1, it is going to take, let's say, both, right? So num1 becomes 1, num2 becomes 1. If I remove, if I just say add underscore 2 and I say 3, then the value of num1 is 3, num2 is set to default. What happens if I want to specifically mention what is num1 and what is num2? So num1 is 10, num2 is 20. See, in this case, this is the extreme case. This is where I need to know the exact variable names called, or so. Let's test. If I say num, is that going to work? The answer is no. It does not expect a variable called num. It expects num1 and num2. Where is that written? It is hard coded inside the definition. Input parameters ke num. The names are num1 and num2. You have to, if you are passing it like this, you have to give correct names, which means you need to know the names of the variables. If you don't know the names of the variables, you can't pass. So this is good for, let's say, developers, but it may not be good for the users. How will the user know what is the name of the variable? In this case, what is happening? Value passed is assigned to the first variable. Okay. Of course, if I'm going to say add value 1, 2, 3, 4, it is going to give me an error. Oh, sorry. Okay. Add 2 takes 0 to 2 positional arguments. 0 to 2, why? Because it can not accept, it may not have any input variables as well, in which case both the variables will be set to default and they will be added, so the answer will be 0. Or they can have 2 positional arguments, which is the value of both of the variables, but I have given 4, and that's why this is going to give me an error. All right, so that's what I wanted to do here. When it comes to creativity, this is where the place is. Using one variable, one input, one, let's say, default value, it's not going to make much of our lives interesting. But the moment we have functions with multiple input variables and multiple return statements as well, by the way, we can have multiple returns as well. Okay, let's see what we can do with that quickly. Okay, and then we are going to take some questions. Okay, so let's say I'm going to call this return both. Okay, I'll take num1 and num2. I am going to return num1 plus 1 and num2 plus 1. Is that a valid function definition? The answer is yes. The definition of the function is actually correct. How do I call this? Return both. Okay, in this case, it has actually given me both the numbers. You see, it has given me a set. Let's take this into a variable, and let's try to check the type of the variable, and it is going to be a tuple. Okay, it is going to return me a tuple, a set of records as an output from the function. If I want these two values to be separated into two different variables. Example given as of now, if I type output, I see a tuple with two values. I have to play around, I have to do, let's say, subsetting and things. Why not I say output 1, output 2 is equal to return underscore both. Is that going to work? The answer is yes. What is the value of output 1? It is the first output. What is the value of output 2? It is the second output. In this case, because I've not entered anything, that's why it is a bit confusing. So let me enter something, 44 and let's say 77. So I entered 44 and 77. Num1 value is 44. Output 1 should be 45. Num2 value is 77. Output 2 should be 78. And that's exactly what it is. Okay, this is also a very, very, you can say, Pythonic way to get the output. But in this case,
Value should increment, right, by 1.
sorry.
The value should increment, right, by 1. 44 should be 45.
Yeah.
And 70 should be 78.
Yeah, I think you can see my screen, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that is what exactly has happened. So num1 is 44, hence output 1 is 45. Then num2 is 77, and hence output 2 is equal to 78.
Type output 1 will be type of output 1.
Type of output 1, let's see. Int. Because the value returned is an integer. If let's say I'm going to do this, okay, that's a good question actually. Let's say I'm going to do this. If I do this, what happens? If I do this, the output will be a tuple, but the output will be something like this. It did not recognize the variable name. I have to do something for it to recognize the variable name. And that I'm going to look into in the string kind of operation. This is simply returning two strings, in which case there is no value of a variable. If I come back to this format, then the output is given as integers. Okay, then I have integers and, as output, and my function is working as expected. So the return type, I don't have to define. It can be string, it can be integer. I think I'll make a stop here. I'll just go on mute. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, I think there are no other questions. So maybe we can make a close. I'm going to share you the notebook and then the videos of the last 2 days. I think I've not shared the video of yesterday, so I'm going to share that with you as well. I think if there are no other questions, we can close the call. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks all.